to this as I hope you've been looking forward to it. We've been looking forward to this for better than a month now. And I want to begin by just telling you what a wonderful search and call committee you have. They have made Barbara and me feel so welcome here. I don't think, I've worked across the years with a lot of different search committees, meeting them and going to different churches, but I don't think I've ever worked with one that has been as effective, as organized, and as loving as this search committee has been. So we want to say thank you to the search committee and thank you to all of you who gave furniture and other things to furnish the apartment in which we're living. It's a wonderful apartment over at Pine Ridge off of Wheaton Way out there. And I just want to say thank you to those who moved all that furniture in. Thank you to the search committee. Thank you to you for your warm welcome this morning. We're glad to be here in Bremerton for the fall months. It's turned fall-like in Arizona, did just about the time we were leaving because it cooled down, as Christy said, to 106. And that's about it until November or December there in Arizona. But we're glad to be here in Bremerton and glad to be here with you in worship this morning. Will you pray with me? Now may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. I expect that there must be a question that is haunting the shadows of your mind this morning as you look up here to the chancel and see an unfamiliar face looking back at you. For quite a number of years now, you've seen the same face looking back at you and have heard the same voice speaking to you. And it must be a little disconcerting to see a different face and hear a different voice speaking to you from this pulpit. We're all in the same boat, however. None of us like change, but change is all around us. And we're all in that boat of change taking place because the truth of the matter is that you're not the faces I'm used to seeing looking back at me. For about 15 years now, I've been preaching to a group of faces that became very familiar and dear to me. But now all of that has changed. And I suppose that both of us are feeling a little bit, just a little bit, uneasy this morning, wondering how it's going to be, wondering what it is going to be. So let me try to put your mind at rest by saying to you that it is perfectly all right with me for you to allow that question that is haunting the corridors of your mind to come to the surface. Because if I am accurate in thinking about the question you'd probably like to ask me, that question might be, what are you doing here? And why do we need an interim anyway? It's exactly that I'd like to talk with you for a few minutes about this morning in the context of the text from 1 Peter that we have read. I want us to try to think about why I'm here and why we need an interim in the light of that text. It's that those questions are appropriate and important questions because the answers we give to those questions will form the basis of the life that we're going to share together for the next few months. It's appropriate and important to ask those questions because change is difficult for everybody. None of us really can say that we enjoy change or that we embrace change. It's always a difficult thing, but it's something that life demands of us, isn't it? No matter what, life demands that we keep moving. So much so that most of us would like to say with the old-time blues singer, everything nailed down seems to be coming loose. With all that change swirling around us, it is extremely important then for us to try to answer those two questions this morning. What are you doing here? And why do we need an interim anyway? Let's begin with the second of those questions. Why do we need an interim? And in answer to that, let me share with you an experience of a member of my family who is a part of a congregation whose beloved minister had been with them for at least 20 years before the time came when he felt he needed to move on. That minister had been with them through a period of significant growth in their church's life. He'd been there at all the times when a minister ought to be there. He'd been there with them when marriages were celebrated. He'd been there with them when babies were born into families. He had been with them when families fell apart, broken apart by divorce. He'd been with them when illness came to lay them low. He was there with them when death's cold knock came to the door. But now the time had come for him to move on. And on the first Sunday in that congregation, when he was no longer with them, everybody was a little ill at ease. Nobody knew exactly what to do. You understand that feeling, don't you? I understand that feeling. Nobody knew exactly what to do. And so they didn't like the feeling of being in that kind of limbo, and they decided right then and there on that first Sunday after their minister was gone that they didn't want an interim, they didn't need an interim, and they weren't going to have an interim. And so, with no time taken to grieve the leaving of their beloved longtime minister, with no time for thinking about the way their life was unfolding from day to day in that congregation, with no time for asking the question, what is God calling this congregation to be and do at this time in our life? They just jumped right in and called a minister within a few weeks, and the result has been disaster. That new minister had a different vision of church than their previous minister had, but with no time for the congregation to have thought about its vision of church, you can understand that they rebelled against that new vision that was laid upon them. The new minister unwisely made all sorts of changes in the programs that the church was offering just right offhand. And because they'd had no opportunity for thinking together about the value of the programs they were offering or about what programs they were engaged in, they didn't like the changes that were made, and they have rebelled against those changes, and the result is that that new minister is in deep trouble. And I mean deep trouble. Everybody in the congregation is unhappy. There are those who like him and those who don't. There are those who think he knows what he's doing and those who don't. And nobody is happy. And their life together has become an unproductive, ineffective melee. Nothing worthwhile is happening, and all of that might have been avoided if they had taken the time for a thoughtful interim. It's a good thing that you are doing to take the time for what we hope will be a thoughtful interim. Well, that may answer the question, why do we need an interim? But it doesn't begin to answer the real question you want to ask this morning, the question, what are you doing here? Why are you here in that interim spot? And the answer to that question is this. I have heard a call from God to come and walk with you in the next steps on your journey as a congregation. I have heard a call from God to come and be your pastor and walk with you through the inevitable changes that will come. I have heard a call from God to come and live with you and walk with you in a way that hopefully will make the time when your new permanent minister comes something happy and productive and worthwhile. So let me tell you, as the one who has heard that call and answered it, that I do not come to you claiming to be somebody who has all the answers. But I do know some of the questions. I have come not to fix everything or change everything or control everything. I've come to be your pastor during these interim months and to walk with you step by step as together we begin to unwrap God's great gift of the future, that gift that Peter refers to in our text for this morning as a living hope. I have come to be your interim pastor and to help you claim the future as God's gift, a gift that will hopefully bring to you indescribable joy, an inheritance that will never, ever fade. Now, like Peter in the text that we read this morning, I know, and you know, I hope, that claiming that future is going to have its difficulties, and it's going to require some work, and it's going to have its problems. But I believe with all my heart that God has a future for this congregation and everybody who's a part of it. A future that will be well worth whatever effort and work has to be put in to claim that future. As I'm thinking about the journey that lies ahead of us, a journey that we are called to undertake with joy, with courage, and with confidence, I think about an experience that my mentor and teacher, Fred Craddock, shared with our class one time. He told one time about an experience that he had sitting in a congregation, a rural congregation in Tennessee, trying to listen to the minister preach on his favorite text, "Be not the first by whom the new is tried, for a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. It is better to be safe than sorry, for fools rush in where angels fear to tread." He said it was a hot and muggy afternoon, and they had the windows open in the pews. The window next to his pew was open. And he said the minister was droning on and he was trying to listen to him when suddenly he saw a man walk up to the window. And the man looked in at him sitting there and said to him, "Psst, psst, hey, Fred, what do you want?" He said, "I'm trying to listen to the sermon." He said, come with me, Fred." He said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I know where a pearl that is worth more than all the other pearls in the world is buried. And I'm going there right now." "You're kidding," Fred said. "There is no such a place." No, he said, "there is such a place, and I'm going there right now. I'm going to a place where bums are invited to eat at the king's table. I'm going to a place where lavish parties are thrown for prodigals who come home. And I'm going there right now." "You're kidding," Fred said. "I don't think there's any such a place." "Oh, no," he said. I'm not kidding. I'm going there now. Come on, Fred. Come with me." Whereupon Fred said he turned his back to the window and continued listening to the sermon for the morning. When the sermon was over, the minister asked him about that guy at the window, and Fred said, "Well, I hope that disturbance didn't bother you too much." "Well, who was that guy?" the minister said. "Did anybody go with him?" "Oh," Fred said, "none of our crowd went with him. But I did notice that he had 12 people following him. 12 people following him." Let us pray. Your gift of the future calls us from afar, O God, inviting us, enticing us, wooing us, and we with hesitant step inch forward. Do not let us waver, O God. Do not let us waver. Amen. You